Hello and welcome to quarterfinal coverage of the modern leg of Grand Prix Las Vegas. I'm Brian David Marshall and I'm joined in the booth by Pro Tour Hall of Famer Paul Rizzo. Paul, Martin Yuza, he's on Humans. Ili Cassis, he's on Kirkland Ironworks. We saw Martin play against a different version of this deck earlier in the tournament. Didn't work out for him. What are you expecting here?
Well, already we're seeing Martin do something we had not seen him do in that previous match, which is play the turn one champion of the parish. Whenever the Humans deck is playing against these sort of solitaire-type combo decks like Quarterfinals Ironworks, getting that turn one champion of the parish is so powerful because all of his best clocks involve champion of the parish, and the follow-up play of Kitesail Freebooter is ideal. It's disruptive. It pumps up the champion of the parish. Great start for Martin.
All right, and he looks at a hand, and I got some bad news for us here. Ili is a bit of a promo guy.
Oh, my gosh. Is that 3 copies of Scrap Trawler that he has in his hand?
That's what it looks like. And it looks like an Emrakul there at the...
yeah, but this freebooter is just going to be absolutely brutal. It's probably stripping the Mind Stone out of Ili's hand and just really making his hand look weak.
And that's exactly what he does. Takes the Mind Stone. Gets in for 2. And now Ili's a turn behind on his mana development.
Yeah, that was a kind of an ideal opening for Martin, and he's really happy about the way this is developed. I mean, if Ili doesn't find a third land on turn 3, this could get out of hand very, very quickly.
Now, Martin spent a lot of his last Kirkland Ironworks matchup waiting for a Mantis Rider to show up.
Right. Yeah, it's always kind of a tough balance when you're playing these sorts of aggressive decks that have disruptive elements, trying to figure out how much of your attention you should divert to increasing your clock and how disruptive you should be. In this case, something like Meddling Mage on Scrap Trawler.
Which is another card he has in his hand.
Yeah, shuts down half of his hand, but Mantis Rider is just going to provide an absolutely brutal clock. So, interesting decision point. Martin wants to close Ili's windows of escape as tight as possible.
All right, well, this seems to be what he's thinking. It looks like he's just going for the Mantis Rider, ticks up his champion of the parish, gets in for 7.
7, yeah.
Yeah.
Hard to disagree with really that plan. I mean,
Flying Vigilance Haste from the Mantis Rider and Human somehow.
Uh-oh. And we see him going right to the Mana Stone, Ancient Stirrings to start the turn here for real, and not the way he wanted to start his turn. Unfortunately, his deck just did not cooperate with him in this game. And for Martin, I mean, if you're wondering at home how to make 30 Grand Prix top 8s, starting with a 1-drop and then playing a 2-drop and then a 3-drop on the play, that's a great way to do it.
You want to see him double spell next turn? Would that be the ideal?
Yep. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, just talking about Ili for a second, we talked about Martin in history. Ili played in the very first Pro Tour.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and we did an interview with him at the last Pro Tour, and he said, yeah, I played, I assume in the juniors division.
Wow.
But he's been playing for a very long time.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of his. I'm a big fan of his style in terms of the way he comports himself during a match. Just a true sportsman and a gentleman.
Yeah, very thoughtful player, too.
Yes.
And in both senses of the word.
Yeah. And that's one of those, that game was it's a totally different game. He's able to stick a turn 2 Mind Stone. The freebooter is just absolutely brutal. I mean,
that's what this Humans deck does,
right?
It breaks your heart when you play against it.
Yeah.
And now the players are looking at each other's lists. They're going to see, think about what they're going to sideboard, but also this is the first time they really get a good look at what their opponents might be bringing in. And you talked about this as a leveling game earlier. Yeah,
so for Martin, there's no secrets, right? We mentioned this before. He's going to bring in Kataki War's Wage as well as Reclamation Sage, 2 powerful anti-artifact cards. Almost certainly Dark Confidant as well, as we mentioned. From Ili's perspective, a little bit of a different sideboard from Matt Nass. Only access to 2 copies of Lightning Bolt, which we saw be so effective for Matt Nass in his match against Martin earlier. Some other kind of less effective anti-creature measures. He may want Collective Brutality. It's a little bit on the weak side versus this kind of a strategy. On the flip side, though, cards like Meddling Mage, like Kitesail Freebooter, like Thalia, you just have to get them off the board. So he may decide, you know what, Collective Brutality is not ideal, but I just need some form of interaction against those hate bear type creatures.
Now, how concerned is Ili about something like Aether Vial? Is he thinking about bringing in something that lets him take out an artifact like an Ancient Grudge.
Yeah, it's possible. One thing I've done occasionally, with sideboards like this is bring in one Ancient Grudge with the idea that drawing one is usually okay. They're going to have an Ether Vial, a good chunk of the post sideboard games, but it's certainly not mandatory. Ether Vial is good, but you don't want to junk up your combo deck with too many cards like Ancient Grudge and then have your opponent not draw a Vial.
Martin, two Clan Ironworks decks at the top tables. Martin has thought about this sideboard plan a couple times now.
Yeah, and Martin actually has a much harder sideboard than Ely does in this situation because of the fact that against this Ironworks deck, as opposed to maybe some other combo decks, there are creatures in it. There are those Scrap Trawlers. So Reflector Mage, which is normally horrific against these kinds of control or combo decks, is sometimes amazing against the Clan Ironworks deck. So do you want to shave Reflector Mages? Do you want to take them all out? Do you want to leave them all in? Not sure. Martin obviously will have kind of made a decision, but you see him taking a little bit longer to complete his sideboarding here.
Looking around, you can see Max Mick and Yuri Ramsey playing in the background there.
And they appear to be sideboarding as well. Those Tron mirrors, they usually, you can tell who's going to win very, very early on. If someone's able to stick a card and then exile a land, there's almost no coming back from something like that in the Tron mirror.
All right. Ely and Martin both done looking, making their decisions. All right, shuffling up here. It's a very practiced flick of the cards there. And you're not supposed to pile shuffle for randomization, but people will still usually do one set of piles just to make sure after sideboarding they got their number of cards right. So especially with 6 piles, very easy to do that.
Yeah, I'm always going to pile shuffle my deck one time before each game, and it's just the function of counting my deck. That's basically it.
Martin is sounds like Friedman got Ben Friedman is up 1 game, but against Luke Renard.
Wow. So the players are wheeling and dealing here. It seems like a lot of them have already finished the first game. They must have dinner reservations here in Las Vegas that they're trying to get to.
Yeah, I'm aware that's someone was rooting for all Goblin guides in the top 8.
That's
that
right.
You, Paul?
I can't recall, but we'll have to launch a DCI investigation into that.
What is the best restaurant to eat at in Las Vegas with only a half hour until closing time?
Oh my gosh! Well, I've showed up at Carne Vino at closing time before and stayed for an hour and a half, and they treated us like kings. So that was my old go-to.
All right, players are drawing up their hands here. And again, we've watched a lot of Matt Nass in the feature match area, but Ely Cassis taking a slightly different approach for his Clan Ironworks. He's just looking to tear some Eons.
In his hand, this game looks quite a bit better. First of all, he's on the play, which is a big help. He's already gotten onto the board early, and he's going to be able to stick a Mind Stone on turn 2 because he can get it in under any of Martin's disruption.
And here is Noble Hierarch for Martin.
Yeah. Noble Hierarch is arguably the worst of the 3/1 drops that the Humans deck can play. But we've talked about this. One of the strengths of the Humans deck is how duplicative, how consistent it is because of how much redundancies the deck is able to build in. So he gets onto the board with the Noble Hierarch. He's developing his mana and setting up something like, for example, a turn 2 Mantis Rider, which will provide a pretty strong clock. And there's Mind Stone. Yeah, Mind Stone is one of the kind of the key cards of this deck. They stop making cards as good as Mind Stone, right? It is an excellent card which accelerates you into your forecasting cost cards, and if you're flooded, you can cash it in for
card was a
more
favorite.
action.
It was a favorite card of someone you knew very well coming up in Magic. Darwin Castle.
Oh, sure.
Often known for playing 4 Mind Stones.
Sure.
So there's Meddling Mage. We'll see if we can find out what that is naming. It's naming Clan Ironworks.
Right. So Clan Ironworks, Scrap Trawler, those are kind of the 2 cards that you'd think about naming with the Meddling Mage. certainly with Ely having access to a Chromatic Star and a Dark Steel Confidant in play, Martin can't say go and let him potentially stick a turn 3 Ironworks with all of that going on. So Karkland Ironworks, a clear, strong name from Meddling Mage there. And great picture choice on Meddling Mage, I think. If you have the choice, I think that's the one I would go with.
I'm trying to remember which invitational she won.
I can't recall. Cape Town, maybe.
All right. Here is Collective Brutality. Takes out the Meddling Mage.
And this is exactly the interaction we discussed during sideboarding. Collective Brutality, 2-mana sorcery, kill a 2-toughness creature. Not exactly a modern bomb, not an incredibly impactful card, but Meddling Mage is just such a brutal card, and Ely just can't leave it on the table. So we did see him bring it in, and it's pretty useful here.
Yeah, takes out the Meddling Mage, clears the way for Karkland Ironworks. But here comes the Mantis Rider. Here comes a 4/4 champion of the parish, thanks to both the Noble Hierarch and the Mantis Rider.
Yeah, and Martin say, okay, well, the disruptive plan isn't working. I'm just gonna get you dead before we can do anything funky. But here, he's saying go. The shields are down, and Karkland Ironworks is about to enter the battlefield.
Yeah, it is about to resolve. Can Ely win from this spot? Does he?
Well, he's certainly going to make a go of it. It's starting with a Wellspring in play is usually a good way to get going. He already has access to 10 mana, and Emrakul is only 15, so it's certainly possible.
So here we see him keeping track. That purple die is keeping track of the colorless mana.
Colorless mana. Is that Terrarian?
That is a Terrarian.
Okay.
Yeah, the players, okay, they're just using cards. This way you'll put a basic land face up to track colored mana that might show up in his mana pool.
So I see a copy of Mirror Retriever, and is that another Wellspring?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so there's going to be some action this turn. This is, we're going to have to kind of walk through this pretty slowly here.
All right, so there's the Wellspring. Goes down to 1 mana in his mana pool, but draws a card when it comes into play.
And if you're just joining us, you see Karkland Ironworks up here on the screen. As Ely is going through this entire process, each artifact that he's putting onto the battlefield, he's spending 1 or 2 mana on, and then he's cashing it into the Ironworks to get 2 mana back. Each time, the artifacts usually have a into the battlefield or a leaves the battlefield trigger, so he's continuing to churn through his deck, either break even or even net mana.
Right, which you see with the Mind Stone there. Plays it for 2, but he gets 1, sacrifices it, so it gives him 3 mana overall. Plays a Darksteel Citadel. Now he's counting up.
Uh-oh, this could be Emrakul.
Is this going to be Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn? It is.
Wow.
So Ely's going to get to take a turn after this because he cast it. Normally we see Emrakul hitting the battlefield, but we don't see it being cast. This is actually hard cast. And so now we're in Ely's next turn, and the Annihilator trigger is on the stack from Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn.
Yes, and that's...
Annihilator 6.
Yeah, that's going to be enough here. It was not countered. It cannot be countered. We're in the extra turn. There's really... This is the advantage. Matt Nass likes to play on hard mode. Ely is thinking, I'm just going to play on easy mode.
Yeah, and to be fair, actually, Ely was playing this deck at Modern Grand Prix before Matt Nass and co. really picked up the archetype. And, Martin is going to let him take another turn, but Ely evens things up on the back of Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn.
Yeah, and it's funny how something as simple as getting that Mind Stone on the board turn 2 just changed the whole way that Ely's draw developed. He had the mana, he kind of was able to lean on Martin and not the other way around, and Martin had a pretty reasonable draw. He had a Meddling Mage, he had a Champion of the Parish, Mantis Rider, he had a Clock and Disruption, but being on the draw, he was a step behind.
I really appreciate that sort of soft lock of, I can get to 15 mana this turn.
Right.
As opposed to having to go through this mechanical process where, ultimately you need to find a couple things. It's always like, okay, there it is. Right. And more often than not, you find it. But.
Right. Yeah, it's like playing on hard mode versus easy mode, and Matt, doesn't want to draw doesn't like the idea of drawing Emrakul, in situations where we're not able to cast it. He wants every card in his deck to be impactful at all situations. The flip side of that is we watched his match earlier with Martin, and I was commentating as if it was a foregone conclusion, as if Matt was 100% to win. And then out of nowhere, in a game that seemed over for about 7 minutes, Martin had this one-turn window to draw a Mantis Rider and win the game on the spot, which seemed impossible to me.
Yeah, Matt sputtered a little bit. He just kind of ran out of cards, ran out of velocity. He wasn't going through his deck anymore.
Right. Whereas Ely is just going to cast Emrakul, and as long as you remember your triggers, Emrakul is going to win the game an extraordinarily high percentage of the time.
Right. Of course, easy mode is also having Emrakul in your hand.
Right. Right.
Yeah, it's probably a little harder to find Emrakul when you have to dig through your whole deck to do it.
Sure.
And need to find that as opposed to finding somewhat redundant pieces.
Yes, absolutely.
Just check and see if I can find out anything else that's going on at the table. See if any other matches are moving ahead.
You notice the players here are very cordial. No one, both have been in this situation before. Both look extremely relaxed. There's a tendency to kind of relax a little bit when you've made top 8. You've accomplished, goal 1 in a tournament. That's not what's occurring here. These guys have just been in situations so many times that it's second nature.
Martin Yuza, by the way, top decked a Phantasmal Image on that last turn.
Okay.
So could have briefly put an Emrakul into play, but
yes,
you don't get any of the triggers from it, and it would just get annihilated.
It would have, yeah. He also needed a Tajira Preserver to have a chance in that game. So is this a one-lander for Martin?
It looks like it, but he does have Aether Vial in.
Yeah, one-land Vial Kataki, the Nambo of all Nambos. Man,
you can operate on that.
Yep. Now Martin loves to mulligan more than anyone I've ever met in my life, but even he may have trouble mulliganing an Aether Vial on a land.
He's like the anti-Gerard.
Yes.
All right, well there is the Aether Vial. I like Martin. He's just like committed. He's like, all right, fine, no regrets.
Yep.
Slams the Aether Vial into play.
And this is a card, we talked about this earlier. We've seen it occasionally in hate bear strategies, in Merfolk, and a few other types of decks. Famously, Shata Yasuoka played it in a rug control deck some years back.
The first World Championship.
Yeah, at the Players' Championship. Yeah. But here, Aether Vial's really found its best home because this Humans deck, is so redundant at 1, 2, and 3 converted mana cost.
So does he find another land? It looks like he doesn't. He has to just pass the turn here.
Yeah.
Well, he's like, all right, I'll accept this.
Yeah.
Now, does he have a Mind Stone to get things going here again?
It's like an Ichor Wellspring or a couple Ichor Wellsprings that he's fanning to the front of his hand.
Such a sweet card in this deck. Really just one of the pistons that keeps the Ironworks moving along.
Yep. Now Martin here is going to have access, if he wants it, to a turn 2 Kataki. And notably, Ely's second land is a Darksteel Citadel, and now there's an Opal. So
boy.
This Kataki looks like it's going to be pretty powerful.
And there's an Ancient Stirrings. Great turn 2 here for Ely.
Right. This is the kind of turn 2 against everything in Martin 75 except for Kataki War's Wage is just you're firing on all cylinders. Everything is going so well, but as we've seen so many times before in the past, Kataki can really put a hamper on draws like this. Of course, Martin, the beatdown deck, has Ely all the way down to 20 life, and and once he puts Kataki into play, is going to have to use his upkeep to pay for his own Aether Vial, as we mentioned. So he's certainly going to give Ely plenty of time. Anything could happen in this game.
Now, of course, finding if he had a Champion of the Parish in his hand here. Be pretty nice to flash in at the end of the turn and
wonderful,
get a little bit more clock going. All right, so there's a Terrarian. That's the pick up from the Ancient Stirrings. He's going to pass the turn back to Martin. Martin just goes up to 2.
Another turn of not finding another land. And this was really a turn where he would love to have found a second land, because this is the turn where he could have played a 2-drop and vialed in Kataki. Now he's really going to be reliant on that Ether Vial for kind of his whole game plan.
Again, as you said, he's going to need to pay the upkeep on that Ether Vial from Kataki's War's Wage. We're going to see Ili here. He has 3 artifacts that require his attention here.
Yeah, at least for this turn, the Opal and the Citadel will just pay for themselves, and I imagine he'll let the Wellspring go. But it's a major constrainer on Ili's mana.
And so now Martin also is going to have access to, I think, a Kitesail Freebooter in hand, which he can put into play off of the Aether Vial. Yeah, not the best beatdown card here.
Yeah. So much of Modern is about the mana, right? About being able to make more than one mana with a land, about being able to produce ridiculous amounts of mana, about being able to constrain your opponent's mana or cast spells for less than they're supposed to go into the battlefield for, like Hollow One and the Delve creatures. And here, this game is going to be all about the mana. Can Ili develop his mana against Kataki War's Wage? Can Martin successfully put enough pressure on Ili without any mana for the rest of the game? So,
all right, so here we see an Inventor's Fair, a Terrarian, and an Ancient Stirrings. What card is Ili looking for here?
Yeah, I mean, so he would really like to find the card Engineered Explosives. I mean, that's
Pyrite Spellbomb also seems fine for him if that's still in the deck.
He only has access to 1 Pyrite Spellbomb, so that's going to be harder to find. Engineered Explosives he can find off the Ancient Stirrings. Of course, we mentioned Lightning Bolt and Collective Brutality. Not hits from Ancient Stirrings, but certainly cards that he can try to dig to get out of this Kataki nightmare.
Yeah, if Martin doesn't find lands here, it's not going to be anything that Ili's not. He's going to be fine just paying for the time being until he finds that, and it's actually going to hit Martin a little harder than it's going to hit him.
Yeah, if you looked at the battlefield and you didn't know the text of Kataki War's Wage, you would assume Ili is just crushing him right now. But so much of Ili's mana is just locked down by this legendary spirit.
Is Martin considering not paying for the Aether Vial?
It's possible. Then he would really have to draw another land to do anything. It seems like at least until he finds that second land, you'd want to hold it, keep it around for a bit.
Right, and again, he can deploy cards from his hand with the Aether Vial.
Not to mention, we know he has at least 1 copy of Phantasmal Image in his hand, so we saw before the play where maybe in response to something like Collective Brutality, he could Aether Vial into play a Phantasmal Image, get himself another copy of Kataki War's Wage. I think that's a play that he might value and want to have in the back of his head.
All right, so he gets in for 2 with Kataki. Champion's Block card, right?
Yeah. And certainly a card that's been filled with my dark nightmares many times as someone who enjoys playing Affinity.
Affinity, just not a deck we saw very much at the top tables this weekend. Oh, Thalia is going to come down.
Okay.
And put a little more additional tax on Ili.
Yeah, we talked about the mana, and Martin, with just that 1 Cavern of Souls, which is just keeping his Aether Vial alive from his own Kataki, is trying to close the walls in on Ili. And look, that doubles his clock as well. He's basically...
well, his clock is actually maybe like 1.5 his clock, because that Inventor's Fair is actually gaining a point of life every turn, which is, I'm no doubt, a source of frustration for Martin here. So he's going to, again, tap the 2 mana artifacts to pay for themselves. He's going to let the Terrarian go, draw him an extra card.
And boy, I mean, Engineered Explosives would just be so brutal here. If you're Ili, you want to keep making land drops. Land drops are really good right now. If you've ever played against a Wasteland type deck in Legacy, just continuing to play lands is the way that you beat them. And here, he's kind of being wastelanded, if you will, in a few different manners. So continuing to play lands is going to allow him to keep cycling through his deck and then eventually find some way to deal with Martin's creatures so that Ili can start doing the degenerative things that his deck wants to do.
So it looks like he's considering whether he wants to play a Chromatic Star or a Mind Stone. Again, he's pretty happy just not paying for these cards to Kataki and, as you say, digging and making sure he's hitting those land drops.
Sure.
All right, Martin, what are you going to do? He's like, I'm going to keep paying.
Yep. And he finds another land.
There
okay.
it is. Yeah. There's a Horizon Canopy.
And you see him sit up a little bit in his chair. He's like, okay, we got business here.
Gets in for 4, which will get offset next turn 1 point by the Adventures Fair. And there is, that was a great draw for him.
Champion of the
Parish.
Yeah. Now, if either way, Martin's got a great story. His friends ask him, hey, how'd you do? Well, I missed my second land drop for 4 turns. Oh, sorry. No, I won, and certainly he is far from out of the woods here, but, you got to say it looks pretty decent with the Kataki and the Thalia and now a very, very strong clock.
All right, he's going to pass the turn back. Again, he also, I do believe there's a kite sail freebooter in hand. He can also now get to play that almost like a Vendilion click.
Yeah, he may choose to do that during Ely's draw step is the time he'd most likely want to use the freebooter. Right now we're in Ely's upkeep. He's got he just put the Kataki triggers on the stack and is considering what to do.
And like you said, though, Martin may, this War's Wage is doing so much work for him.
It's amazing.
He may just not want to commit the Ether Vial trigger until he's put in a position where he has to use the Phantasmal Image to, quote-unquote, save
That's a great
Kataki.
point. Yeah. I mean, it's certainly kind of keeping him alive right now. Is those two legends?
All right, so here you see, wow, Ely's paying to keep the Chromatic Star in play too.
So that would indicate that he feels like he's going to play Collective Brutality this turn. That would be my best guess.
Okay.
I think.
And again, I think maybe he's also thinking about freebooter.
Sure.
Yep, now here's the draw step. So this is, if you've ever played against the Vendilion click, you know how this feels.
Right.
This is actually almost a little worse.
I have Nightmares of Kitesail Freebooter from the last Pro Tour, in which I forgot that getting a card back from it would not allow me to attack with my Hazaret, so I very cleanly threw away a match on camera. Yep. But that's why I commentate now, Not sure exactly where we are here. I think
he's tapped his Ether Vial, and Ely has a chance to respond here. And so Ely, this is very interesting, right? Ely is responding to the trigger of the Ether Vial.
Just thinking of Meddling Mage, I would imagine, yeah.
But also, it doesn't give Martin a chance because he committed the Ether Vial. Mm-hmm. It doesn't give him a chance to respond with the Phantasmal Image.
Great point.
If you ask for a draw or concession, you must not.
So this is huge. I mean, next turn, Ely's going to be able to untap and have access to a ton of mana, maybe play a Krark Clan Ironworks.
Yeah, and we mentioned earlier about those lightning bolts, right? Matt Nass came packing with 4, Ely only with 2, but one of them showed up in a key. You only need that one.
You only need one.
What a key moment to have that lightning bolt.
All right, so Thalia's Lieutenant now is the play from Martin, maybe changing what he was going to do originally because he wants more of a clock.
Right.
Because he knows Ely's all kind of tapped out here on his turn.
Yep.
And it means he can try to force through these last points of damage. Boy, it also unlocks mana for him here.
He might have lethal. So he has access to a Phantasmal Image in hand.
He can play 2 humans this turn if he...
But Phantasmal Image is not a human, right? So the Cavern's not able to cast it.
No, but he can do it off the Ether Vial.
Right. But he can't play both Phantasmal Images without drawing something like Ancient Ziggurat or...
I see. I didn't realize there was 2 Phantasmal Images. I assumed he must have some other human as well. Looks like he has a Kite Sail Freebooter or something.
Because if he could put both those in play, that I believe that would have been lethal, right? 3, 4, 5, 8, 10, 12, 13, 15. Yeah, more than lethal if you could put 2 Phantasmal Images in play. So if he had a way to make blue mana.
All right, well.
But as it is, he's still going to be able to put a Phantasmal Image in play and freebooter. He'll probably start with the freebooter, I would guess.
Yeah, I think so.
In case he wants to copy the freebooter.
Oh, and just get 2 cards.
Get 2 freebooter, yeah, triggers. Man, Ely has a lot of cards in his hand. That's got to be pretty scary for Martin, especially knowing he's not protected by that Kataki anymore.
Well, he's going to flash it.
He almost.
He caught it. He caught it.
Yeah, wow.
If he wants to copy the freebooter, he doesn't have the blue mana to cast Phantasmal Image.
And he was about a half a second away from a mistake he would never forgiven himself for.
Wow. Oh, boy, look at this hand. And he is going to want to double hit here. There's Scrap Trawler. There's 2 KCIs. There's a Mind Stone.
So one interesting thing is that if he activates Ether Vial and copies the Thalia's Lieutenant, he could strand the Collective Brutality basically in Ely's hand. But I think, oh wow, there's no real easy way to do this here, because if he takes both the Brutalities, he'll end up leaving him with Collective Brutality. Excuse me, both the Ironworks. He'll leave Ely with a Collective Brutality, so he'll be able to get 1 Ironworks back. Man, this is tough. I don't think there's a way for Martin to fully disrupt Ely here.
Okay, so he takes the KCI. Now he's going to activate. Okay, he gets his triggers. Ely just helps him out and says, all right, here's your other KCI.
Ely needs a land. Ely needs a land between his draw step and that Chromatic Star, because he needs to be able to go Collective Brutality and then get back one of the Quarterfinals Ironworks and then also cast it on this turn. So he really needs in his top 2 cards to have a land or another Mox Opal.
Right, Ily's down to 5 here.
Yep, it's got to be this turn. Well, this is fun.
Yeah, this is exciting.
This is going to be fun, yeah. I'm enjoying this. These are some of the most fun. Oh, you're right. I forgot about the Thalia. He actually needs.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, he's.
So is it suddenly less fun?
It's been so long since Ely cast a spell, I totally forgot about Thalia. Yeah, it's less fun. Yeah, he's in bad shape.
All right, well, you know what? He's going through some sort of motions here.
He really needs actually just to draw Ironworks is what he needs. That's really his best way to get out of it.
I would also like to mention that.
All right, so he's sacking the Chromatic Star. So you see he's got a black and a green in his pool.
I'm so not used to playing decks that Thalia is good against that I just I consider it to be a purely beneficial clause. I don't consider it to be a drawback at all. So obviously foreign territory for me to have to actually play against the Thalia.
Wow. This game started with Martin Yuza on 1 land for, safe to say,
I think he missed it 2 or 3 turns. Yeah, he missed his second land drop. But then found the beautiful Horizon Canopy just in time.
All right, well, here's Collective Brutality. He's pitching Mind Stone to it. And first things first, he's going to kill Thalia. He's out of mana. Gained a life, by the way, worth noting off that Inventor's Fair.
Mm-hmm.
How does he... So there's Scrap Trawler.
Oh, man.
And he's going to pass the turn.
But there's a...
Oh, he's at 8?
Yeah, there's another...
Oh, because of the Collective Brutality, of course.
Right.
But what was the card?
Reclamation Sage. Yeah, he had a Reclamation Sage in his hand that he'd been considering casting for some time, and that clears the way for his attackers.
And Martin uses through to the semifinals here at Grand Prix Las Vegas. Wow. Martin Yuza stuck on 1 land for several turns.
Yeah.
But Ether Vial, just how much mana did he get off of Ether Vial?
It must have made 12 mana for him during the course of that game. Maybe Martin will stop mulliganing so much, honestly. You don't need that many lands, Martin. All you need is the 7 cards in your opening hand, and you're good to go. So we saw there, obviously, the power of Thalia. It was a situation where Ely just, between Thalia, Kataki just couldn't quite get over the hump there.
I think crucially keeping that hand was also seeing Kataki in his opening hand.
Yes, definitely.
Like knowing that even if you don't draw a land, you're going to be able to get it into play in 2 turns.
Right, and it's all fun and games to do stuff like play Meddling Mage and Kitesail Freebooter, but Kataki is really the key.
All right, So we're going to get a game 3 here between Grixis Shadow, played by Ben Friedman, and Luke Renaud playing Bant Company. And what do we think is going on here? We could start looking at sideboards.
Yeah, this is a super interesting matchup. So Luke is playing a take on these Court of Calling Collected Company decks that attempt to use Devoted Druid and Vizier of Remedies to create infinite mana and then can, kill in a variety of different ways.
I feel like Matt Nast's fingerprints are somehow on this deck.
The Grixis Shadow deck, Ben Friedman, the Death Shadow deck, which was the bane of everyone's existence, about a year ago, actually will be more of a control deck in these post-sideboard games. So we already see Grim Lavamancer. His deck is going to be chock full of removal, stuff like Dismember, Engineered Explosives, Grim Lavamancer, Abrade, and he really wants to just keep Luke from assembling his combination.
So here you see a Thoughtseize taking a look at Luke's hand, and boy, that's a great hand. Only 2 lands, but he's got double Reflector Mage and Tireless Tracker.
Yeah, looks like he maybe have taken a mulligan here.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, these are, this is a tough spot. Yeah, Luke is really down to it here, and that Grim Lavamancer, is...
Wow, double Thoughtseize takes both Reflector Mages.
Yep.
And by the way, just gets Ben to now he's in Land of Death Shadow territory.
Yeah, Luke would love to find a land and a Courser of Crufix. That'd be one of his best ways out of this kind of mess.
Yeah, I'm just going to keep Thoughtseizing you. Oh, there's a Kitchen Finks to go with that Tireless Tracker. And he is going to take the Kitchen Finks.
Wow.
Get in for 1 with Grim Lavamancer. Ben Friedman keeps his graveyard in such a weird spot.
Yep.
All right, well, there's a 3rd land for Luke. It's a Horizon Canopy, so he's going to crack those 2 Windswept Heaths that he's just been preserving. He wanted to keep the number of lands in his deck.
Yeah, and the standard play here would be to wait until he could find another land so that he could play the tracker and also get a clue from it. The Grim Lavamancer on the table right now is threatening to immediately kill the Tireless Tracker. So Luke may feel like Ben is constrained on mana, and so he wants Ben to spend his turn, but with nothing else in Luke's hand, I would be tempted to wait for one more land. And Ben, we see immediately.
Yeah, Ben's going to snap that off. He's like, okay. I get to use my Thoughtseize now to get your Tireless Tracker as well. Awesome.
Tireless Tracker is just a card that's continued to impress me. I mean, when it came out, it seemed like good, clearly a limited bomb. It started to make like waves in standard, but now we're seeing a modern staple, just so strong as the game goes long in grindy matchups. Wow, Legacy even.
Yeah, have you seen this card show up in VSL at all?
We haven't seen it yet in Vintage, or I haven't seen it yet, but I maybe with some sort of fast bond, and who knows, yeah.
I've played it with fast bond in Vintage Cube.
Now, the only thing keeping this game from really being a runaway is Ben doesn't have a clock. Grim Lavamancer is just plinking in for 1 point a turn. He really would like to find the...
He just wants a Death Shadow.
Death Shadow, yeah, would be kind of ideal.
Gurmag Angler perhaps at odds with the Grim Lavamancer.
Yeah.
they're in the middle of a work dispute.
Right. And honestly, normally when you see Grixis Shadow decks, they don't have trouble filling up their graveyard, but it looks like Inquisition of Kozilek here.
See, Selfless Spirit and Collected Company. That's a card that can get Luke back into this game. He can't take it with the Inquisition, so he gets to keep that Collected Company. And you see Ben Friedman saying, hold on. It's not your turn yet.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, Collected Company, and to see Luke sitting up a little bit straighter. It's one of those cards, again, because Ben hasn't been able to clock Luke. If he can find a land and resolve a really strong company, he can get himself right back in this game.
Just pokes in for one. It looks like that's a Reflector Mage.
Probably
does not have any blue here.
Yeah, probably the single worst card you could have drawn in this deck in that situation.
I think slightly better than drawing a card from Ben Friedman's deck.
That's a great point. Yep. That's a desperation maneuver. Oh, he has the Collective Brutality. Yeah, brutal. Literally brutal.
Yeah, now he's gonna be able to take away the Collected Company. He's like, do you want? Nope. Let's take that. Get in for one. By the way, Stubborn Denial sort of looming in hand for Ben Friedman as well, as if he can get some big monster onto the board.
Luke's just having to pass the turn back. I think he drew a white creature for the turn, either another Selfless Spirit or Vizier, but not what you want against Grim Lavamancer at all.
I can't tell you, by the way, Matt Nass won his
Okay,
match 2-0. And we talked about the fact that there was just no real sideboard options
Yeah.
for Patrick Tierney there.
Patrick Tierney's deck was designed to prey on creature decks, and I'm sure that was really successful for him all weekend long. He ran into Clan Ironworks, and that was not the matchup that he wanted in the quarters. But good run for Patrick. And so, Ben, Luke is kind of gamely fighting through here, but his deck is just not cooperating, giving him just a bunch of small creatures against Grim Lavamancer, which is just such a gross feeling to have to keep just chunking them out and putting them into your graveyard.
I can tell you also Yuri Ramsey on Mono Green Tron defeated Max Mick, also on Mono Green Tron. So Tron is advancing to play in the hands of Yuri Ramsey to play against Martin Yuza in the semifinals. And then now we are waiting to see whether it's Ben Friedman or Luke Renault that's advancing to play against Matt Nass in the top half of the bracket.
All right. And there it is.
All right, Gurmag Angler.
Yeah, that's what Ben was really waiting for, was that Gurmag Angler to turn this trickle into a deluge of damage. So now Luke is going to be under a tremendous amount of pressure to do something big very soon. We know he still has access to that Reflector Mage, so that's something.
But no blue. Well, there's a Tireless Tracker.
These Tireless Trackers are just mocking me here with no land. But Ben has no graveyard, so let's see. What is his hand? I mean, how does he...
He has a Stubborn Denial. He has a Street Wraith, it looks like. Is he holding it? No? Oh, it was another Collected Brutality.
Wow, so it's going to, kill the Tireless Tracker and drain Luke, put him to 7.
Wow. And
6 more, put him to 1, and it turns on Grim Lavamancer.
Yeah.
Wow. And incidentally shuts off that Horizon Canopy from being able to tap for mana.
There's a Plains, but that's not going to do it. I think Luke's going to just extend the hand here. Ben's like, yep, I'm just going to do the things that I do. And he could draw a card here with Horizon Canopy.
Yes, but he would need Shahrazad or something like that.
He does draw the card. Just double check. You'd hate to forget something. He's got a Devoted Druid. That's a Judge's Familiar.
Yes, Judge's Familiar has made an appearance here.
That's actually the Judge's Unfamiliar, which is what the promo version is called.
So, given that Ben did not activate Grim Lavamancer, I'm thinking we probably have the life total wrong.
That's possible.
Or
well, no, doesn't matter. Luke's just like, hey, look, I'm on camera.
Yeah.
I want to get my money's worth. So great job there by Ben Friedman. And we're going to get Ben Friedman versus Matt Nass at the top of the bracket. KCI versus Grixis Shadow. And then on the bottom half of the bracket, we're going to have Martin Yuza with Humans playing against Yuri Ramsey with Mono Green Tron. It looks like all of our feature matches are done. It means the semifinals are going to be coming up next. There you go. Take a look at that bracket. It's a pretty exciting top 4 here.
Yeah. It's Matt Nass we've seen him kind of dominant all weekend with this Clan Ironworks deck, but he has a very tough task with Ben Friedman's Grixis Shadow deck. Not only can Ben kill out of nowhere with Temur Battle Rage, but he has access to 3 Stubborn Denial and then sideboarding into Ceremonious Rejection and Disdainful Stroke. So Ben certainly has the tools to derail Matt's fantastic weekend. That'll be an awesome match.
All right. Well, you know what? I see Gabby and Luis looming off in the wings. That means they're going to get ready to come in for the semifinals. Paul and I will be back for the finals. Don't go anywhere. Just a couple brief messages.